Hello again. Welcome. Chapter 3. Out to the sea. Hail, friend. I think you slept well. He heard the voice. His eyes stayed closed. He had no present intention nor motivation to responding to the voice. Let it go away. The sun is up. We are preparing the ship to sail. Time to rise, too, for the day. It wasn't going away. He lifted to sitting, his eyes still closed. He groaned and yawned. I was having a good dream. The man laughed. I can see. That made his eyes open. He looked down. He was naked still and fully erect. Tell me she didn't take my clothes. The man laughed. Hvitbjorn looked over blearily, the horrid waking world fogging into view, and he saw the man. Niels, that's you. He yawned deeply. How was your night? He rubbed his eyes and pushed himself to standing. Keep that away from me, Niels said, taking a mockingly large step back. Hvitbjorn cracked his neck and then looked at Niels. We sail a small boat together. It is near everyone. He then took a lunging step towards him, and Niels had to back further away in a hop. Get dressed and come help. It is already noon. This took him by surprise. He looked up. It's what? By Odin's How did you find me? I followed the thunderous snoring. That's why she left. He laughed. Slept well? Slept mightily, he replied. He rubbed his head. Have you any wine? His eyes flashed open. I had mead last night, he said with excitement, and then bent to gather his clothes and dress. You did? How did you have meat? Where did you get it? We have not had any in a shipment for a year. It was that woman. She gave it to me. He smiled at the memory of her, and his manhood bobbed on its own at the thought. Niels pretended not to notice. Hvitbjorn groaned. It tasted like old times. He pulled on his breeches and belted them. These breeches had a place for the belt sewn in, which he appreciated. He then took the cloth foot wraps and tied them around his feet and up his legs to keep the wide base of the pants in place. These he secured and then put his leather shoes on. He stood, still shirtless, and lifted his shoulders to his ears. He heard cracks climb through his shoulders and let out another satisfied yawn. Gather your cloak and tunic, and let's go. Where is your armor? With the ship, he replied, draping the rest of his clothes over his left arm. He picked up his axe last, and then followed Niels back through the village. What was her name? Frick. Niels snorted a laugh. You are a liar, my friend. I think you did not lay with the goddess of fertility in the night. The raider smiled. It felt like I did. Then you think she is got with your child? Probably not. Women like that can make it so she does not get with child. Niels looked at him as they continued to walk. What kind of woman? I think she was a vulva. User of Galder. She spoke much about it. So perhaps you think you are cursed, having lain with a vulva. Blessed it feels more like. If that was a curse, then condemn me to wherever the Christians say we all go when we're bad. That is also just hell. They crested a small rise and saw the smoking houses of the town and the hundreds of warriors working at taking and loading the ships. They call their underworld hell also. That is somewhat unimaginative. Aye, but they do not respect the goddess who rules there. Then who do they think rules there? Some evil spirit, no doubt. I don't care. Hvitbjorn spat onto the sand. Do you have any water? Not with me. There is some on the ship for you. What's in that skin there? This? Niels asked, holding it up. This is water. What? You said you had none. Give me that. I meant none for you, Niels said, taking a step to the left. Hvitbjorn sighed heavily in acceptance. They arrived at the ship and found that much work was being done to get the ships ready for departure. Neither of them knew where they were to sail next, but it was certainly all their wish that they would go back to the city. They all went about their work with as much enthusiasm as could be mustered from a night heavy with feast and drink. However, after years upon years of preparing a vessel for sailing, and being descendants of many generations who did the same, the work was routine. All the hard-packed food was stored in waxed bags and bound with twine. The goats were led on board and tied to the masts to keep them from bucking the rowers in their journey. They piled everything else under the seats and readied their own places for the sailing. Hvitbjorn removed his cloak and tunic from his arm. It was sweating already. He looked around again, hoping to see her somewhere. There were hundreds of men in Harold's army and few women. He knew some few, but there were many he'd never met. He walked into the water on the right side of the ship, going to the center, and stowed his belongings under his seat. Though keeping them out of the seawater, was difficult as the tide was high. They had, of course, chosen a time of day when the tide was low to land. That leaving would be made the easier, with the higher water lifting their hull from the sand. Well set, Harold called from the prow of the ship. Get into position. All you there. Ready. He checked to be sure everything was set on board, all the sacks and boxes tied down, the goats tied up, the majority of the warriors at the rear of the great long ship to skew the weight to the side. Now push! The prow was pushed by a score of men, Hvitbjorn always choosing to be among them. He pushed with all his might, the wet earth beneath him sinking under his weight. They all pushed, and the ship slid away from the grip of the shore. Every warrior who pushed now waded into the water and were helped aboard by those who returned to the front from where they'd stood for the shoving off. The ship swayed to the sides with huge heaves as the sailing Varangian all went to their seat. Oars! Harold called. No one had touched their oar until this was called. They had to do everything as one. No part of the ship could be uneven. Not the work, not the rowing. They all worked together, and the ship held. Otherwise, the ship sunk. That was the way they were taught. Harold and other ship captains knew this the best and made certain their crews weren't too strong in one area or too weak in anything. In fact, Hugr and he had chosen captains on their ability to lead a crew by this discipline, though since the Greek had gone back to Miklagard, it was Harold who made these decisions now. Hvitbjorn and his oar-mate, Niels, lifted from the center of the ship their oar and fed it through the oar port. They'd practiced the movement 100 times and had it perfect, as had everyone else. The oars were all raised, lined to the oar port, and fed through the water, into the water, together. Pull away from the beach! They all were faced away from the land as soon as they sat, and so had to pull the oar to them, then dip the paddle into the water and push. Once the action was done, they lifted the oars from the water and left them out to allow the boat to drift with the momentum. Harold watched the water for rocks and looked back at the beach. He estimated the course and decided if they'd gone far enough to turn. One of these rows carried them with enough power to push the boat a whole length from the land. Another! He called, and all the oars swung forward together. They were submerged back into the water and dragged again forward. They pushed with the assistance of the motion already achieved and were taken far away from the shore. Many on board did not know the direction they were going next. They could well continue west to raid along the coast, or they'd go east, where they would hopefully turn north and return to Miklagard. It had been 2 seasons since the last time they were in the city, and it would be a welcome sojourn from their raiding. West! Harold called in his loudest call, and the many agreed loudly as they turned their oars to follow the command. Hvitbjorn's side of the ship would have to reverse row for a stroke, and could dip their oars into the water from the same position they were in. The whole left side of the ship's oars were pushed to the back of the ship. Both sides worked in unison to row in opposing directions and swung the ship's prow toward the west. Finally, when they were turned west and slightly north to go from the shoreline, Harold commanded the forward, and now the whole of the longship pulled at their oars together. The effect of all of them pulling at once was a profound experience. The hulk of wood and crew moved with strength. To assist in that strength felt empowering. To feel that drive and energy of so massive a vessel moving in part by your action was encouraging. They would pull farther from the shoreline and then run up the sail to catch the wind. Rowing was good practice and made for good axe-swinging arms, but one could not do it forever. Hvitbjorn considered the possibility of returning to Miklagard. No doubt it would mean a transfer of Varangian. Some would leave to return north with their taken plunder. Others would join with the crew and carry on in the raiding. And who could say how long they would stay in the city for? Legend and rumor were circulating that Harold had the Empress lusting after him. He assumed that it was Harold who spread these rumors, though. No matter of that, it would be taken down in the story and oft repeated. Everything seemed to serve and bolster the legend of the great Harold Sigurdsson. Pull! Harold ordered. His fists were full of oar handle, and he pushed them down and forward, then up straight in front of his eyes, and then higher above his head. He felt the resistance as the wide paddle entered the water. Then he pulled back toward himself. He pulled with might and fury. He truly believed one day he would break the oar with the strength of his pull. If you cultivate within your mind a Hugr of brightness, will not the gods more wish to have you at the feast in Valhalla? The words of that woman played more in his mind. Rowing was among his favored things in Miklagard, for it felt like he was actively stoking the hot flames of hatred. He grunted a battle growl with every pull of the oar, and saw himself killing Harold, completing his vengeance and fate. Hugr of brightness, he mused. It did make a certain sense. The gods loved to laugh and enjoy their feasting. In fact, all feasting was made better with laughter and song. Surely, the High One would find his strength and feats enough to welcome him into Valhalla. But if he were to cultivate a Hugr of brightness, might not that go to having him welcome at the hall with laughter and praise, as well as horns of triumph and the beating of shield drums? The hall shall be storm of mead, drinking, and contest when I enter it. Loud shall the horns blare as I walk through the great door. He knew he was bound for Valhalla. It was fated. His whole life was fated. But perhaps the manner of his treating with the gods would depend on his lightness of his Hugr. Hvitbjorn suddenly saw the fiery pulling of hatred in his rowing as something the gods would have to overlook as opposed to celebrate. That thought cooled his mind a moment. A calm settled over him, and remarkably, he continued to pull with the same strength. He looked up and saw the sun in the sky. There were birds circling overhead. He heard the swish of the water as the oars cut through it. He missed his birthplace in the frigid north then. The wooden seat beneath him seemed to come into sharper focus. The handle he held, the tightness of the leg wraps, and the softness of the leather shoe. Much tension in his shoulders relaxed. He felt like he might fall from this place. There was such a strange change that came over his Hugr. Somehow, he felt like his Hugr was no longer burdened, and in the freedom stretched to where it should have been. He loved this feeling. Hvitbjorn started to laugh, not over loud or uproarious, but it did laugh. What is it? Asked Niels. I don't know, not entirely, he responded honestly. He felt also a lack of tension around his nose, like he'd been scrunching it up, only now, though, and only now thought to release it. He felt relaxed, in a way he never knew he could. We have the wind! Ready to sail! Harald shouted, and the real work began. Those at the center of the boat lifted their oars from the water and passed them to each other to stow them along the middle next to the mast. Then they too began to untie the sail from where it rested at near head height, running lengthwise along the ship, and turned it to the waiting hands of those on the side. The high spar was tied to two ropes that fed through metal rings at the top of the mast, and the sail ties were undone. Then others toward the front hoisted the sail, and it rose up high, catching the wind even without fasten. The spar reached the top of the mast. The bottom spar was tied off as well, and the remainder of the rigging was secured. Once done, and the wind started its work to push the ship, every other oar left the water and was placed along the middle, and they, Varangian, were sailing. The wind now catching and filling the sail meant that most of those rowing could relax. There were a select few sailing Varangian attending the rope and adjust as instructed. For the rest of them, it was simply a matter of keeping themselves entertained. A good rate, Hvitbjorn said loudly. Those around him turned and looked at him with mild surprise. It was, Niels said tentatively. It was a good fight and a good feast. The coast of Africa should be clear for a time. Though these corsairs seem to come from nowhere and appear everywhere, Hvitbjorn continued. Well, it's you right there, Ragnar said from behind. As long as they do it, it'll mean more plunder and loot for our hoard. Our wealth and hoard on Midgard. Much of it shall I have burned with me as I ascend to Valhall. Your beliefs are old, laddie, Ragnar said with his thick accent. It is through the salvation of Christ that one attains real wealth. It is a strange thing, Hvitbjorn started, to be met with the enormity of all things, and have to make your decision about the possibility of fate, as so small a thing as man. Perhaps it was never meant that we should have any of the answers realized in this life. What might be the outcome if it were our meaning to spend the whole of our lives contemplating? Those around Hvitbjorn were silent as they listened. Where was that from? That is the most I have ever heard you say it one time, the shorter woman Bodil said. Something I heard about the lightness of Hugr. He looked around and saw all the eyes on him, realizing that he was indeed acting unusual. Just thinking about what kind of a man I want to make myself into be. That Odin might want to sit and discuss all things with me while we drink in his hall, or if I am allowed a seat by the Hildskjolf. I think if Odin receives you in his hall, it will be for battle prowess, Ragnar said. That is always what I have heard of his god. I think there is some merit to thinking in this term, though, Niels added. We do what we can to impress our gods while we are here. Such a thing is no needed for Christians, said Ragnar. We need but have our sin forgiven by God. No matter what is done, I will ascend to heaven. While you must die in battle, or spend your life accomplishing feats and deeds, as glorious death in Valhalla or hell. There is also Folkvanger, the field that Freya. It is a place of abundance and community. I believe I am bound for Folkvanger, Inga said. Do not you heathen all long for Valhalla? Asked Ragnar. Most warriors do. It is what this symbol is for, Ragnar looked at the tattooed symbol on Hafvald's shoulder. It is to indicate to the Valkyrie that we wish to be selected for Valhall. The symbol was of 3 interlocking triangles, ornately decorated with further symbols and runes. Impressive. That will garner the attention of the gods, certainly, Bodil said. I only have it painted on my armor and shield. She looked around a moment as if to show it, but decided it was not worth the effort. And you, White Bear, where is it you have this trinity to show that you are a Christian? Ragnar chided. I have not yet taken that symbol on my leg. I intend to impress the gods through my action, that there will be no need to plead with the Valkyrie. They will know already by Odin's instruction that I am most worthy to enter into Valhall. He furrowed his brow. Somehow, strangely, he felt compelled to speak more on it. Surely the gods would appreciate to hear words of praise spoken of their home. There in the shining hall shall we feast, slaughter the meat of Midgard Bioe, eating and drinking and fighting and fucking. These things there are in abundance in Valhall. We've taken warriors to join in the Einherjar. Einherjar. Does not that mean those who fight alone? Hafvald asked. Who are you, who talk so much and know so much about the nature of our gods? Where is the silent and brooding friend? Show me your eyes, White Bear. I do not know that you have taken the hammer of our friend. Hvitbjorn cleared his throat. His thought. I am not hammer. I feel a change within me. This lightness of Hugr, I think. I do not yet know how can I explain it. But something is changing in me. Well, the large Hafvald said, so long as you keep swinging that axe like Tyr's fury, then you are still welcome to sit here and raid with us. Hvitbjorn fixed him with a stare. Try and stop me. You will see what happens. I don't want to stop you. I am saying you can. And I am saying that it is not your place to grant me that permission. He responded while straightening his back and achieving his full height. It was nearly as much as Hafvald's. Hafvald was among the largest men Hvitbjorn had ever seen. He was a Bjorn, a bear, tall and broad and strong, and loved the fight above all. Enough, Bodil said, putting her hand on Hvitbjorn's back. No need for contest right now, boys. I am not the one who is making a contest, Ragnar said, putting his hand out in front of him in a protective manner. Is this heathen? Hvitbjorn laughed. There is no contest to be had. I am already a clear winner. What feat can you boast of? Hafvald visibly perked up. Oh, I like this. Come and list your feats. What shall the skalds sing of you? Hafvald said. Niels himself was a skald, a singer of songs, a teller of stories. It was something Hvitbjorn never had a talent for, but he always appreciated hearing about. Thus far, he had wanted at times to have his own feats sung thus, but hadn't the means to tell them. I have a story, Niels said. The others looked at him expectant. Oh, of course you do. Go on, then, Hafvald said. There was a feast I attended at the Bergrim Hall in Norway one winter. It was a great affair, with the Earl's Fane's wondrous mead. Everyone wanted to try it, for his last barrels from the year before were famed in the land. I heard that the King Olaf himself asked for one as a gift, and was delighted to get only a skin of it. I heard 2 tales, and wanted to taste this famous mead, and so during his late winter feast I arrived, with stories and furs for trading. The feast was going well, people were eating and drinking in high spirit, but all the mead we drank were what we brought ourselves. The Earl's Fane would not bring out his barrels, and no one said a word of it to him. He looked around the group to see their expressions and build the tension. It was, of course, me who talked to him, though. I go to the high table and see him drinking from a cup. You drink your own meat, I start, and expect us to drink ours. But you know well We are here to taste this oft-spoke-of drink you have. Why don't you open the barrel and let us all taste your mead? The great Earl looked around the hall, for indeed it had grown quiet at my pleading, and he addressed us. My mead is what you all wish, he asked, and we all agreed. Good! I was waiting for one with the audacity to say so. Too many have come tonight and been too polite. Bring the mead. The barrels were then brought out, and they were huge and ungainly. When these were opened, the whole hall was stayed for a moment as the overpowering scent of honey filled each our noses. We all then started to dip in our cups and horns and tankards. The honey flowed that night, and all had our fill. I myself, he paused, gesturing to his belly with his thumb, wide smile on his face, drank 5 times my horn full of the wondrous mead. It was so sweet that it sparkled on my tongue. Late into the morning, after all of us were awakened by some shouting and calling for our attention, we raced outside to see what was so important, and we marveled to see what had become of the hall. He waited, hoping at least one would oblige him. What? Had it burned while you were sleeping, but the flames did not touch you? Asked Inga. Or did this Svein prick you all and steal from you while you slept? Asked Ragnar. None of those things. It was better. When we woke and went outside, we realized that the mead that we were drinking had been too strong in the taste of honey. So much so that what we saw upon the roof of the hall was incredible. The whole roof was covered with bees. They were starting a nest there for all the honey they could smell. That morning also marked the first day of spring that year, which is why I will always say that it is the bees who make the spring. And after that feast, the Bergrum Hall has been renamed. Now it is called the Bee Hall, after the many hives who dwell in the roof and the rafters. They are welcome inhabitants, and their honey now makes the mead for the good Earl Svein. The others laughed and clapped at the story. Hold on, Bodil said. That's not a feat. That's just a story. I want to hear of deeds. 5 horns of strong honey mead is a feat, Niels argued, though he immediately recognized the mistake he made. For you perhaps, Inga said loudly. The others laughed. Go on then, woman, Ragnar said, the laughter still ringing in his words. Why don't you tell us of one of your deeds? What feats have you done? Well, I was hoping that someone else would regale me with theirs. Well, I was hoping that someone else would regale me with their stories. Havald shrugged. You have heard all mine, I'm certain. She smiled at him. Indeed, I have. My great feats. I think it would be the time I had to cross the river in the winter, where I lived. Havald nodded. I know we know each other's stories already. I'm telling them. You are just lucky to hear it again. The winter was hard. The snow was driving, and the winds were blowing icy and strong from the north. My family were in the village, while I had gone with my brother to hunt a reindeer we'd seen in the area. The hunt was sadly not a success, but on the way back, we found something awful had happened. When we'd crossed the river the day before, it was at another place where there was a bridge. But in the hunt, we'd been led farther south to near where the village was. So we were not near the bridge. She paused some at how awkward that had come out. It was cold. We were both chilled to the core and needed a good meal fire. Despite our cold, though, we knew we had to cross the river as the bridge was too far to walk. My brother went first, that bold fool. He braved into the water and clung from rock to get across. I started to follow after him, when he suddenly lost control and was taken into the light blue water. He called out in a panic and I jumped in after him. The water was colder than death. I managed to run with the water's flow and caught hold of his coat, and then held fast to a log. Then it was a hard task, but I dragged him to the far bank, and we were able to make it to the village where we were met with a warm fire and good warmed ale. I never forgot how cold it was on the walk. They all applauded her bravery and endurance in the cold. Grand virtues and impressive for them, to be sure. Inga looked at Hvitbjorn. You seem more talkative, and you seem more loud today. Why don't you tell us a story of your deeds? He looked back at her. I don't really know how. All people know how, Fit Niels said. Story is not some magic that you must be shown. It is a magic that you are born with. It is in the nature of our kind. We are all of us tellers of story. Why don't you tell us about that axe? I know you guard it with the jealousy of a god. He smirked at Ragnar, who looked only at him with an unimpressed expression. It is my father's. He was the real hero. He gave this axe to me when I was younger. Where is your father now? Asked Bodil. Dead. Killed. That is, though, a different story. If you want, I can tell of the axe. They nodded and agreed. Hvitbjorn breathed out. This kind of attention was strange to him. I am from the north, far in the north. I grew up with my father and mother in our settlement, where the men mostly hunted whales, or seals. There was always seal or whale meat and oil to burn. But one winter it was strange, too warm, I think. My father was taking me hunting. We were going to hunt for seal for the community. He took me in a boat. We had spears, and he had his knife, which he always had. The hunt was... Oh, he looked to Inga. Your story is about the hunt in winter, too. Should I tell a different story? Niels put a hand on his shoulder. Not at all. Tell your story, friend. He sounded reassuring enough. All right. Well, we were 4 days from our home. We would eat of our seal rations and sleep in oxen skin tents for the night. It was cold, though. It was very cold in the night. You know how the sun doesn't last long in the winter months, too. We slept during the night, but only had the light of the sun for an hour of the day. Anyway, so we were navigating with the dancing skylights. The others nodded. Then we saw the body of a seal that was eaten. My father told me to ready the spear, and we did. Then, from the blind snow, there came a great white bear. It was hunting us, and it attacked. I was pushed to the ground right away as my father struck at it. I turned while on the ground and got up quickly. We had to fight for some time, but the bear was enormous. Then I stabbed it in the neck with my spear, and the head broke off. The bear reared up and was going to kill me, I think. But my father stepped and was separated from it. The bear died not too long after that. My father had to skin the animal, and we ate the bear meat that night. Then we cut out as much of the meat as we could carry, and somehow my spearhead came out too, and was taken into the meat. He also took some bones, and we carried it all back. We had taken with us to our home. The skin was made into a cloak. It's the one I wear now. And the spearheads were both reforged with the bear bone to make the axe head for the axe. But the spear haft he used for the handle was the one that I've been holding. It is the branch from Yggdrasil, the world tree. He nodded to himself. That is my story. The others had all been wrapped with his tale. That is an excellent story, Niels said. I think we should talk some time about how better to tell it, but I really like what you have there. Is that all true? Of course it's true, Hvitbjorn said. I believe every word, having seen you fight. Only a man who has seen something like that can fight as you do. I agree, Bodil said. A made-up story would be better told. You wear the cloak and fight with the bone iron of that bear. I suppose Hvitbjorn is not so bad a name for you. He nodded. It is a good thing to call me, but it is not my name. Well, tell your name then. I would like to hear it after all this time, Bodil said. Not yet. My name will be recorded with the story of my life. I am called Hvitbjorn. No, that is not my name. Perhaps one day my name shall be legend. One day. Well, end of chapter 3. And thank you all so much for joining me in this. I suppose until next time.